You ever notice how people get so scared when life nudges them forward? Just a tiny shove, a little whisper in the dark, and suddenly they cling to the old like it's some kind of lifeline. They act like staying exactly where they are is safer than moving an inch into the unknown, but someone keeps tugging at them, a feeling they can't shake. A direction they didn't choose but somehow keeps appearing right in front of them. People call it intuition, fate, timing, whatever helps them sleep, but deep down they know it's more than that. It's that sensation that the ground beneath their feet isn't trying to trap them, it's trying to guide them, push them, lift them. You ever notice how people get so freaked out when something nudges them forward? Just a little push, a subtle tap, and suddenly they're clinging to the familiar like it's the only thing keeping them alive. They hold on so tight to the routines, the habits, the comfort of what they already know. They can't even see the hand guiding them towards something new. It's amusing, really, because they think that stillness is safety, that stagnation equals protection. They stare at the old, at what's worn and predictable, and call it stability, as if moving an inch beyond it would topple their carefully constructed little worlds. But life doesn't work that way. Life has this delicious sense of humor. It never nudges you toward comfort. It nudges you toward growth. And growth is messy, awkward, and impossible to control. See, the problem most people have is that they confuse movement with chaos. They think if the next step isn't obvious, if it doesn't fit neatly into their expectations, it's dangerous. They panic at uncertainty. They fret over shadows, ignoring the hand that's already placing them exactly where they need to be. But that's the beauty of being led. You don't see the whole staircase. You don't know where the next step lands, or how many more steps exist beyond it. All you know is that something bigger than your fear is pulling you forward, nudging you just enough to keep you from falling behind, and you have to trust it. Most people can't. They trip over their own hesitation, stumble into their doubts, and convince themselves that waiting is safer. And that's when it gets interesting, isn't it? Because the push isn't random. It's deliberate. It's precise. It knows exactly what you need to leave behind to make space for what's coming. Old friends drift out of your life. Old habits crumble, old ideas vanish, and while you're busy complaining, panicking, or even resisting, something quietly rearranges the stage for the next act. The subtlety of it is exquisite, isn't it? You don't even realize the hands that move behind the curtain, the invisible threads that shift the scenery in your favor. You just feel that pull, that tiny itch, at the edge of your awareness that tells you, step forward, even if you can't see the whole path yet. Most people want the spotlight, the grand announcement, the sign flashing in neon. They want proof, guarantee, certainty. They want to know the destination before they take the first step. But the real movers, the real survivors, the real winners, they know the secret. They know that waiting for permission, waiting for clarity, waiting for a perfect sign only delays the inevitable. Life doesn't announce its plans with drum rolls or fireworks. It nudges, it whispers, it pushes you gently, cunningly, deliberately, and only if you're willing to pay attention do you notice the pattern forming beneath the chaos. And it's funny, isn't it, how the same push that terrifies people can also empower them. The same uncertainty that makes them cling can also liberate. Because when you trust that you are being guided, even in the darkness, even in the mess, even when everything seems upside down, you start moving differently. You stop overthinking the obvious. You stop panicking at every unexpected turn. You start listening, really listening, not with your ears, but with something deeper, something quieter, something alive that senses the currents no one else can see. And those who cling, those who resist, they miss it. They miss the shift in energy, the alignment of circumstances, the subtle nudges that whisper, step here, now, not tomorrow, not next week, step here. But the ones who lean in, the ones who sense the pull and respond, they find themselves moving in ways they never imagined. Their steps aren't random. Their steps are precise, connected, meaningful, even if they don't realize it at the time. And that's the delicious part, how something that seems invisible, uncertain, even frightening, turns out to be exactly what they needed all along. It's never about the comfort of the old. It's never about the certainty of the familiar. It's about the tiny nudges, the quiet guidance, the invisible hand arranging the pieces while everyone else is busy complaining. Those nudges, subtle and cunning, are what prepare you for what comes next, even before you understand it. The world doesn't shout instructions. It whispers them to those who are paying attention, and the rest, well, they get left behind, clinging to the past while the path forward quietly opens in front of you. You ever notice how people panic when a door closes? Not just any door, the ones they thought would always stay open, the ones they trusted, the ones they counted on. They stare at the closed frame like it's some kind of punishment, like life just forgot to include them in the plan. They think the universe made a mistake, that the world has it out for them, that they're being left behind. And the funniest part? They don't see the hidden pattern behind it, the quiet orchestration that's been moving pieces around long before they even noticed. Doors close not to trap you, not to punish you, but to redirect you, to nudge you onto the next step, the one that actually matters. But most people never notice until the moment has already passed. And even then, they're too busy lamenting to realize they're being led. See, timing has a way of hiding in plain sight. People want everything to announce itself with fireworks, with drum rolls, with a neon sign that screams, asterisk, this is your chance. Asterisk, they want certainty. They want instructions printed on a sheet of paper. They want to see the entire staircase before taking the first step. But life doesn't work like that. Life whispers. It nudges. It arranges things quietly, cunningly, in ways no one else sees. And those who panic, those who cling, those who mourn the closed door, they miss it. They miss the invisible currents moving them forward, gently, deliberately, towards something better than they even imagined. And here's the delicious irony. The very people who feel left behind, abandoned, or punished are often the ones closest to the breakthrough. They don't see it because they're looking backward, staring at the door that closed, lamenting the opportunities they think they've lost. They're focused on absence, on loss, on what is no longer available to them. And while they're stuck in that loop, the universe, or whatever you want to call the unseen hand, is already pulling together the elements of the next stage. It's subtle, it's clever, it doesn't announce itself, it doesn't ask for applause, it simply works. And the ones paying attention, the ones willing to step forward without seeing everything get pulled forward first. People resist it at first. Of course they do. Change is uncomfortable. New directions feel uncertain, and uncertainty scares people more than anything. They cling to the old, to the familiar, to the predictable, even if it doesn't serve them anymore. They resist the gentle tug toward growth. They fight against the shift because it doesn't fit the story they wrote for themselves. And that's the beauty of it. The shift doesn't care. It doesn't negotiate with fear or hesitation. It keeps moving, keeps arranging, keeps opening new spaces, whether they fight or comply, whether they notice or ignore it. And while they're stuck in that loop, the ones who lean into the guidance, who feel the pull and take the step, they discover something amazing. They discover doors they never expected. They find paths that weren't visible before. They encounter people, opportunities, and moments that were quietly waiting for them all along. And the steps feel natural, inevitable, as if the universe has been laying the path just for them, carefully, deliberately, in a way no one else could see. That invisible alignment, that silent orchestration, is what separates those who grow from those who linger. Most people never understand this. They cry over closed doors, never realizing that each one is a setup, a nudge, a preparation. They look at loss as punishment, when really it's guidance. They think the absence of something means the absence of hope, when really it's the precursor to a greater presence. And those who notice, those who lean in, those who take the step without seeing the whole path, they move faster, higher, and farther than those who cling to what was. And the real trick? You don't even have to understand why the door closed. You don't have to know what lies ahead. All you have to do is trust the pull, trust the nudge, and take the next step. Step forward when the invisible hand guides you, when the currents shift beneath your feet, when the signs appear in ways too subtle for others to notice. That's when the real movement begins, and the closed door becomes the first piece of a puzzle you never knew you were meant to solve. You ever notice how people freak out when something feels too big to handle? Something unseen, something just beyond their control, something that whispers, asterisk, step forward, but you won't see the end yet, asterisk. Most people freeze. They want the whole map. They want a blueprint. They want a guarantee that the path won't shake beneath their feet or that the ground won't crumble out from under them. They want certainty, but life doesn't hand out certainty like candy. Life moves in shadows, in subtle pushes, in quiet nudges that don't make sense at first. People call them coincidences, fate, timing, luck. They name it anything except what it really is: preparation. A careful, deliberate setup that works whether they notice it or not. See, the funny thing is that most people only see what they're willing to see. They stare at the surface, ignoring the currents below, ignoring the gears that spin invisibly behind the curtain. They measure the world by what is obvious, by what is immediate, by what fits neatly into their expectations. And while they're busy labeling everything, life is quietly rearranging itself around them. Subtle, precise, unstoppable. The bigger the opportunity, the quieter the buildup. And those who panic, who resist, who cling to the familiar, they miss it entirely. They're too busy staring at the old to notice the new. And isn't it ironic? People fight so hard to hold on, to control, to predict, and all the while the world, or whatever unseen force nudges us, is trying to push them forward, gently, cunningly, precisely. Not shoving, not shouting, just arranging things, placing the next step right in front of them, letting them stumble onto it at their own pace. But the ones who panic, the ones who wait for perfect signs, they miss the alignment. They complain, they question, they delay, and all the while, the quiet momentum keeps moving without them. And then there's the moment when they can't ignore it anymore. When the pull is too strong, when the signs are too clear, when the old life suddenly feels too heavy to carry. And that's when choice becomes real. Do you fight it? Do you resist it? Or do you lean in? Because the thing about guidance, about being led, is that it doesn't care about your fear. It doesn't argue with hesitation. It only asks that you step into the unknown, step into the discomfort, step into the space that scares you, because that's where the next stage is waiting. And it's waiting quietly, patiently, with no need for drama, with no need for applause, with no need for recognition. And it's funny how subtle it all is. People expect signs to be loud, obvious, dramatic. They want the heavens to shout, the lights to flash, the universe to announce itself with a neon board. But the biggest changes, the biggest shifts, the moments that rewrite a life, they're quiet. They slip in when no one's looking. They hide in plain sight. They move through channels invisible to the untrained eye. You feel it as a pull, a whisper, a sense of inevitability, not a demand, not a threat, just a soft but undeniable guidance that something bigger is waiting. Most people resist it because it feels uncomfortable, because it threatens their assumptions, because it demands trust in something they can't see. But the ones who move with it, who listen to the quiet pull, who step without seeing the whole path, they are the ones who get to the extraordinary. They are the ones who discover doors they didn't know existed, who meet people they weren't expecting, who find opportunities hiding in plain sight. And all of it seemed invisible until they followed the pull, until they trusted the unseen current guiding them. And isn't that the cruel joke? That the very people who panic, who resist, who cling to old safety, are missing everything, while the ones willing to follow the quiet nudge move faster, higher, farther than anyone could have predicted. The world doesn't shout, it whispers, it arranges, it leads, and only the ones who pay attention, who trust, who step, get to see the pattern unfold in their favor. It's never about understanding the whole path. It's never about seeing the final destination. It's about noticing the pull, feeling the guidance, taking the next step even when the rest is invisible, and letting the currents carry you toward what you were quietly ready for all along. You ever notice how people are terrified of moving into the unknown? They clutch onto what's familiar like it's a life preserver, even if it's full of holes, even if it's barely keeping them afloat. They stare at change like it's a monster waiting to devour them. Like stepping forward will mean losing everything they think they own. Comfort is a cage, and most people don't even realize it. They don't see the bars because they painted them with familiar colors, made them soft, made them feel safe. And that's the problem. Safety becomes a prison when the world is trying to push you forward. The world doesn't wait for anyone to feel ready. The currents are moving, whether you cling to the old life or not. Most people think growth comes with a neon sign, a big dramatic announcement, a glittering spotlight. They want proof before they take the first step. They want to see the whole staircase, even though all they need is the next step. And that's the beautiful trick. The next step is all you ever need. Life, fate, whatever you call it, doesn't hand out the whole path at once. It places the pieces quietly, cunningly, in ways too subtle for anyone else to notice. And while people hesitate, panic, complain, the steps keep being laid, one by one, for those willing to trust what they cannot yet see. It's funny how fear disguises itself as wisdom. People call it caution, prudence, reason. They think if they delay long enough, wait long enough, nothing will go wrong. But the truth is, waiting never brings clarity. Waiting only brings stagnation. Life isn't concerned with your hesitations. Life doesn't bend itself to fit your comfort. It doesn't knock politely and ask permission. It nudges, pulls, arranges, and if you resist, it will find a way around you. But if you move with it, if you lean into the unseen guidance, you discover doors that were hidden in plain sight, paths you didn't know existed, opportunities that were quietly waiting for the right moment to appear. And people hate that. They hate the ones who follow the pull. They hate those who notice the currents, who step into the unknown with trust, who move while everyone else is frozen in indecision. They call it luck, coincidence, or divine favor. But the truth is simpler than they imagine. It's alignment. Alignment between preparation and opportunity, between awareness and action, between the quiet nudges of life and the courage to follow them. And those who are too afraid to step, too skeptical to trust, they miss it. They linger in the familiar, in their cages, watching the invisible hand guide someone else forward while they tell themselves it isn't real, it isn't possible, it isn't for them. And isn't it beautiful, the way the next step works? You don't need to know the whole journey. You don't need to see the end. You don't need the map or the instructions or the guarantee. You only need the courage to take what's placed before you, to follow the subtle pull, to act when the signs are small and the path is unclear. And the moment you do, everything begins to shift. Opportunities appear in places you thought were closed. People show up who were meant to guide you. Circumstances align in ways that seem impossible until you realize you were never alone in the first place. Most people never see it coming because they are too busy looking at what they've lost, what they fear, what they think they can't control. They stare at endings and see punishment, at delays and see failure, at change and see disaster. And while they panic, the world quietly moves them forward anyway, places the steps in front of their feet anyway, whispers the guidance anyway. And the difference between those who grow and those who stagnate is simple. One listens to the pull, trusts it, and steps, and the other doubts, resists, and freezes. And the funniest part? Those who step into the unknown, those who follow the guidance, don't need approval. They don't need validation. They don't even need certainty. They just need awareness. They need courage. They need the willingness to let go of the familiar and move toward something bigger, something unseen, something prepared in silence while everyone else was distracted by fear, doubt, and small expectations. And it's in that willingness, in that quiet trust, in that first step, that everything begins to shift, that the next stage arrives, that life's currents start carrying you toward what you were quietly ready for all along. You ever notice how people panic when they sense a change coming? Just a tiny hint, a subtle shift, and suddenly they're frozen, staring at the unknown like it's a monster waiting to devour them. They cling to what's familiar, wrapping themselves in routines, habits, and tiny predictable moments, as if holding on will protect them from the world moving forward without their permission. They don't see the invisible hand guiding them, placing the next step in front of them, nudging them toward growth, toward opportunity, toward something bigger than they can imagine. They call it coincidence, timing, luck, but you and I know it's more deliberate than that. It's preparation disguised as chaos, invisible until the moment is right, and even then most people miss it. Most people want the path laid out in neon lights, a clear map with every step spelled for them. They want certainty. They want a guarantee that nothing will break, nothing will fail, nothing will challenge them. They want the whole staircase before they climb the first step, and when they don't get it, they panic, they resist. They refuse to move, afraid of the shadows that dance along the edges of the unknown. But growth, opportunity, transformation, those things never wait for permission. They arrive in whispers, in nudges, in subtle currents that pull you forward whether you realize it or not. And the beauty of it is that it's invisible to everyone else. The people clinging to the familiar don't notice. They don't see the puzzle being rearranged while they stand frozen in place. And here's the delicious irony. The people who feel afraid, uncertain, or left behind are often the ones closest to the breakthrough. They don't see it because they're looking backward, staring at what they've lost, at doors that closed, at what they think they've missed. They focus on absence, on endings, on the comfort of the old, and while they're stuck in that loop, the universe, or whatever you want to call it, is arranging the pieces for their next stage. It's quiet, it's subtle, it doesn't announce itself, it doesn't seek applause, it simply works. And the ones paying attention, the ones who notice the pull, who feel the nudge, who take the step without seeing the entire path, get to move first. Fear disguises itself as reason, caution, prudence. People love to pretend that waiting, delaying, doubting is wisdom, but it's not. It's hesitation dressed in a fancy costume. Life isn't going to stop until you feel ready. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't slow down for indecision. It nudges, pulls, shifts, and you either step with it or you get left behind. And that's where courage comes in. Not the kind of courage that shouts or demands recognition, but the quiet, patient courage that trusts the invisible currents guiding you, that steps into the unknown when everything else screams, "Don't move." The next step doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't need a guarantee or a blueprint. All it needs is action. One small move, one choice, one moment of trust. That's how momentum begins. One step builds into another, and suddenly, doors you didn't even know existed start appearing. People show up who were meant to guide you. Opportunities quietly align. The invisible hand that's been nudging you all along becomes visible in retrospect, like a pattern you never could have seen while you were moving through the chaos. Most people will never notice this. They will mourn what was, complain about what isn't, resist the subtle guidance until it passes them by. They will try to rationalize it, call it bad luck, blame the timing, or convince themselves that the world isn't fair. But the ones who trust the nudge, who lean into the invisible push, who act even without knowing the whole story, they move faster, higher, farther. They enter spaces others can't see yet. They meet people others overlook. They find doors that were invisible to everyone else, and they step through them without hesitation because the pull is undeniable, irresistible, deliberate. And isn't it funny how subtle it all is? The world, fate, guidance, whatever you want to call it, never shouts. It never demands attention. It whispers, nudges, arranges, waits for the ones willing to listen. The rest stay stuck in fear, clinging to what they know, never realizing that stepping into the unknown was always the only way to reach the extraordinary, the next level, the moment they were quietly ready for all along. You ever notice how people resist the obvious when it stares them in the face? Something small, something subtle, something almost invisible nudges them, and they panic. They clutch the familiar like it's a lifeline, like letting go would mean falling into an abyss. They stare at what they know, at what they've built, at what they think protects them, and they call it security. They don't see the cracks in their little world, the pieces that have been quietly rearranged while they were busy sleeping, busy doubting, busy pretending everything is under control. And the funniest part? They think they're in control. They think the steps they didn't take, the opportunities they ignored, were choices. But no, the truth is simpler and far more delicious. They were being led all along, and they were too blind, too fearful, too distracted to notice it. Most people want everything to announce itself, to scream for attention, to present itself neatly with instructions and guarantees. They want the entire map laid out before they take the first step. And when it isn't, they hesitate, they overthink, they panic, they make a mess out of what was meant to be simple. Life doesn't work that way. Life whispers, it nudges, it arranges, it places the next step in front of you and waits, silently, to see if you're brave enough to take it. And the beauty is that it doesn't force you, it doesn't shout, it doesn't care about your panic. It only offers, quietly, the next step, and if you follow, everything begins to shift without a single grand announcement. Fear has a funny way of disguising itself. People call it prudence, caution, wisdom. They convince themselves that hesitation is virtue, that waiting, analyzing, doubting, protecting themselves is the smart move. But it's not. It's just fear playing dress up. And while they linger, paralyzed by their own thinking, the world, the universe, the invisible currents keep moving. Doors open that they cannot see. Paths reveal themselves to those who step. People arrive who were waiting for someone ready to move. And the contrast is exquisite. While some cling to the familiar, the courageous are already walking into the spaces no one else can perceive. And isn't it ironic how the subtlety makes it perfect? The guidance, the unseen hand, the quiet pull nobody else notices. They scoff at it, dismiss it, call it coincidence. But those paying attention, those willing to step without seeing the full picture, they are the ones who gain. They follow the pull, they trust the rhythm, they act without guarantees, and suddenly the world begins to unfold in ways too precise to be random. And the more people doubt, the more they panic, the more hesitant they are, the clearer the pattern becomes for the one willing to follow. The next step isn't dramatic. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or drum rolls. It doesn't announce itself in grand gestures. It's subtle, barely perceptible, almost like a shadow brushing against your awareness. But if you notice it, if you feel it, if you act, momentum begins. One step leads to another. Suddenly, opportunities appear where there were none. People appear who are essential guides. Circumstances shift in ways that seem impossible until you realize it wasn't random, it was deliberate. Invisible preparation, hidden alignment, the quiet orchestration that rewards those willing to trust the pull. Most people never see it. They cry over endings. They panic at uncertainty. They cling to the old and the familiar, thinking it's protection. They ignore the subtle currents pushing them forward, the gentle nudges arranging the pieces of their life without anyone noticing. They never realize that every closed door, every delay, every uncomfortable change was preparation. That fear, hesitation, doubt, they were not meant to stop them. They were meant to test them, to see if they would trust the unseen, follow the quiet pull, step into the unknown without guarantees, and find that the next step was ready all along. And the best part? The ones who step into the unknown, who lean into the subtle guidance, who trust it without needing proof, they discover a reality invisible to everyone else. The invisible currents reveal the paths, the doors, the people, and the opportunities that others miss entirely. They move faster, higher, and farther than those clinging to fear. And the world, the universe, the unseen hand, they just keep nudging, arranging, guiding, quietly, deliberately, toward what the person was always ready to find, and they never even see it coming. You ever notice how people underestimate the power of a simple step? Just one step, a small movement forward, and suddenly everything shifts in ways they never predicted. Most people want the entire path lit, the whole staircase visible, the end already promised, because they're terrified of the unknown. They cling to what's comfortable, familiar, predictable, thinking it's safe, thinking it's enough, and that's the joke, isn't it? Comfort isn't safety. Comfort is stagnation. The world doesn't